This is the iconic whistle that terrified audiences for nearly a century. And this whistle changed cinema forever. So why is a raspy, out-of-tune whistle so important in cinema history? And how did director Fritz Lang revolutionize the creative use of sound in film with it? A weak, raspy whistle, slightly off-key, almost careless, and yet this sound terrified audiences nearly a century ago. More than that, it changed how sound would be used in film forever. So why does this whistle matter? And why would a simple melody become one of the most important sounds ever put to film? And how did director Fritz Lang, working at the very dawn of sound cinema, use it to invent an entirely new way of telling stories?
Cognac.
To understand M, we need to understand when it was made. The film was released in 1931, just a few years after sound was introduced to cinema. At the time, sound films were still a novelty and pretty much a gimmick. Early talkies were rigid, microphones were hidden in flower pots, actors had to stand still so they wouldn't drift out of range, cameras were locked in place because they were too loud to move. Most filmmakers treated sound like film theater. Dialogue explained the plot, music played continuously, silence was avoided at all costs. Sound existed to support the image, never to challenge it. Fritz Lang saw something else, and here enters M. M is a film about a city in fear. Berlin is being stalked by Hans Becker, a child unaliver, played by Peter Lorre, but Lang makes a radical decision. For much of the film, we don't see the killer when he's most present. We hear him. The sound that announces Becker is a short melody from Edvard Grieg's Peer Gynt, a piece originally written to accompany a fairy tale fantasy. It's light, it's playful, it's almost childlike. In M, it becomes a threat. This was the leitmotif before cinema knew what one was. The whistle is an early example of a leitmotif. A leitmotif is a recurring musical phrase associated with a character, idea, or emotional state. The concept comes from opera, most famously used by composers like Wagner, but it almost had never been applied deliberately in film before, especially not like this. In M, the whistle appears before Becker does. Sometimes it appears when he's off screen, sometimes when he's not visible at all. Sound breaks free from the image. The audience learns to recognize the melody long before they consciously understand what it means, and once they do, the sound becomes unbearable. Because it doesn't just tell us who's near, it tells us what's about to happen. And why is the whistle so disturbing? What makes the whistle terrifying isn't just its association with violence, it's who's producing it. The whistle is diegetic. It exists inside the world of the film. Becker isn't accompanied by music. He creates the sound himself, and unconsciously on top of that. He doesn't even realize he's revealing himself. That detail matters. This isn't a dramatic musical cue imposed by the filmmaker. It's a behavior tick, a nervous habit. Sound becomes psychology, and because the tune is incomplete, never fully resolved, it mirrors Becker's lack of control over his own impulses. M has no traditional music score. In the era when films were drowning in orchestral accompaniment, Lang removes music almost entirely. The whistle becomes the only recurring musical element. This does something subtle, but powerful. Instead of music telling us how to feel, sound tells us when to feel afraid. Emotion is no longer continuous, it arrives in spikes. And those spikes train the audience to listen. The use of silence. The use of silence in M is extraordinary. It's not just about sound. It's about the absence of sound. And Lang frequently drops the soundtrack in total silence. Not even footsteps, no background noise, no environmental texture, no room noise filler. This was unheard of in early sound cinema, where silence was often seen as a technical failure. Lang uses silence as tension. In these moments, the city feels hollowed out, like it's holding its breath, and when sound finally returns, it lands with extreme weight. Sound as space and pressure. Lang also experiments with sound in ways that feel strikingly modern. Voices overlap, crowds drown out individuals, rooms echo unnaturally, Sound doesn't always match the camera's perspective. Sometimes we hear things we can't see, and sometimes we see things we can't hear. This creates the sense that the city itself is watching and listening. Sound becomes architecture. Why this changed cinema? So why does M matter? Because it was one of the first films to understand that sound is not just information, it's part of the narrative, literally embedded in it. Sound can foreshadow events, it can reveal character psychology, it can create dread without showing violence, and it could carry meaning independently from the images. Fritz Lang didn't use sound to decorate cinema, he used it to reshape how stories could be told. And nearly every modern film that uses sound to unsettle, to imply, or haunt, owes something to that simple, broken whistle.
Wie heißt du denn?
Elsie Beckmann.